Disenchantment, the brand new animated series on Netflix which had huge hype and expectations when it was first announced. Why did this series in particular have so much hype? Well, because the series is being created by Mr. Matt Groening himself. That's right, the guy who created The Simpsons, the guy who created Futurama, is now creating his brand new series, Disenchantment. But does this new series live up to the hype and continue the tradition of Groening's awesome cartoon creations? Or is it something that would be better left in the past? You know what? I'm keeping it. So whereas The Simpsons takes place in the present and Futurama takes place in the future, Disenchantment naturally takes place in the past. The story is set in the medieval times, in a fictional place called Dreamland Kingdom. And although being set in the past, the setting offers a lot of creativity with the inclusion of mythical creatures such as elves, giants and griffins, along with more magical elements such as demons, fairy tales and wizardry. In this fantasy world, we follow the adventures of our three main characters: Princess Tiabini Mariabini, who is referred to as Bean for short, Elfo, who is an elf, and Lucy, who is Bean's personal demon. Now let's take a closer look at the characters. Lucy is essentially the bender of the group. Bean discovered Lucy after opening some random box in the palace, where Lucy claims that he is now her demon for life and will help influence her to do bad stuff. Kinda reminds me of how Wuo is introduced to Jack Spicer in the Shaolin Showdown series. Anyone remember that show? Lucy is actually my favourite of the three characters. I think he gets some of the best lines, and voice actor Eric Andre helps deliver them in a very calm but also cynical tone.
Entertainment is just a tool that pacifies the masses and leads to the decay and ultimate collapse of civilization. Let's clap along.
His character also seems to evolve over the 10 episodes, starting off as having no emotional sympathy for anyone, but later on starts to show hints that he may in fact have a more caring side. That, coupled with the fact that he seems to have a bigger story arc as to why he was assigned to Princess Bean, I think his character has a lot of promise for the future. Next we have Elvo the elf.
Hi, I'm Elfo.
He's basically the dim-witted comic relief character, having an oddly similar appearance to Bart Simpson, but an almost identical personality to Fry. Elfo decides he wants to leave his old home as he finds the constant level of happiness too unbearable, and wants to seek out a place where he can experience a wider range of emotions. That of course brings him to the Dreamland Kingdom, where he meets Bean and Lucy. Because of his sheltered upbringing, he's normally naive to any dangers or mean-spirited people, leading to some comedic situations. My negative with him though is that for some reason the writers decided to have him have a crush on Bean, which comes across as a little forced and feels oddly familiar to how Fry had a crush on Leela in the Futurama series. But with Futurama, this was developed over time and felt more natural, whereas with Elfo it happens on their first meet, coming across as a little forced. I can only think that they chose to do this in order to give the series another overarching plot element, but I think it's one the series could have done without. Now on to Bean. Bean is a princess who doesn't want to be a princess. She's basically the embodiment of Leela from Futurama. The strong, not so ladylike female character, with abnormal hair colour, possessing an attractive physique, but with one ugly facial trait. And I'm just gonna come out and say it now. I think Bean sucks as a character. Bean is meant to be the main character who we follow and connect to, much like we did Fry in the Futurama series. Unlike Fry though, Bean doesn't offer as much relatability. Fry was a loser in his time, had no friends, no partner, worked in a dead-end job, things that most of us can relate to at least one of, or feel empathy for. Bean however is a princess. She has wealth, a father who loves her, and lives a better standard of life than most of the people in the kingdom, yet still whines like she's the biggest victim in the world.
Might as well give up and accept that I'll never be anything more than a wealthy queen of a fabulous faraway kingdom.
Yeah, her father tries to marry her to someone she doesn't like, but that gets resolved after the first 2 episodes. Part of her reasons for rebelling is because she doesn't get as much freedom as she likes due to being a princess. but that doesn't really carry much weight, as she's always sneaking out to go get drunk or to go on adventures, or, just freely roaming about the kingdom. Hell, in one of her rebellious missions to spite her father, she not only decides to join a group of robbers, but willingly goes ahead to grave rob from her dead family. What? And only renounces her ways because the robbers ended up betraying her. How's this meant to be someone I feel pity for? I just feel like the problems we're meant to feel sympathy for just don't outweigh the lavished and privileged lifestyle she receives. Kinda reminds me of the Chris Thorndike problem from Sonic X. Anyone remember that show? There are also some non-major recurring characters too. My favourite of these, who is also my favourite character in the show, is Bean's father, King Zog. I think John DiMaggio does a great job voicing the role, though at times it does just sound like Bender after having one too many drinks. I think the king gets the strongest comedy out of all the characters. His tight-fisted rule on the kingdom and lack of concern for others is hilarious, but at the same time, you also see that he can be a caring father and clearly has some buried emotion from the death of his previous wife. Another minor character I loved was Prince Merkimer, who was one of the guys set up to marry Princess Bean. He's kinda like a Zach Brannigan persona, very arrogant and very full of himself, but it works.
Presenting Geesebat's younger brother, the new heir to the throne of Benwood, Prince Merkimer.
Don't be sad. She would have left him for me anyway.
And he's voiced by the legendary Matt Berry, who is one of my favourite voice actors ever. He just gives the character so much energy and charm, almost identical to the character he plays in the IT Crowd. Anyone remember that show? My negative is even though he stars a lot in the first 2 episodes, after that he just kinda disappears for much of the season. I was really hoping he'd stick around to be one of the more recurring characters. So what are my thoughts on this show as a whole? Well, visually it looks fantastic. The backgrounds are well detailed and seem to adopt the 3D computer animation that we saw back in Futurama. Character designs are interesting and varied, and the animation is consistent with Groening's other shows. Comedy wise, I'd say it's a hit and miss. Some jokes I laughed at, others just fell flat.
Wow! It's so small. Oh wait, I'm far away.
But for the majority, I'd say the best way to describe my reaction was when you smile and just let some air out of your nose. I'd say the show is definitely weak in its first 5 episodes, where it's much more focused on the comedy aspect and trying to throw way too many jokes in your face. But in the second half, the level of jokes starts to settle down and we get more focus on the character development and the overall story, especially in the last few episodes. Hell, I even think Bean gets better towards the end of the season. Though my one gripe with the season's ending is that it does leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger, which is something I personally don't like. It gives the implication that the show didn't trust itself enough and so has to bait audiences into wanting a second season just so we can get the first episode to resolve the ending of the previous season. But like I said, the show did seem to get better in the second half, so maybe it will continue to get better if it does get another season. I mean, the first seasons of The Simpsons and Futurama are pretty underwhelming compared to what the following seasons would bring. So maybe it'll be the same for this. Plus, there are some story arcs which are hinted at that I would love to see get expanded upon. I'd say give this show a watch, but don't set your expectations too high, and try to watch the whole season before passing judgment. Overall, I'd give this new series a 7 out of 10. Hey everyone, thank you very much for watching the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed what you saw, and comment below on what you thought of Disenchantment, as there seems to be a very mixed reception out there at the moment. Also be sure to check out some of my other videos, which you'll see on screen now. But until the next one guys, take care.